Shaping up to be a pretty pleasant night. Spent most of the day on the road working today. And I'm gonna take a look at the earth oven because it's not doing what it's supposed to do. Which mainly means drying. It's not drying. And that means I can't take the sand form out, allegedly. I think we're gonna have to assess whether or not I'm gonna risk it. The danger is if the clay itself has not dried to the right consistency or the right hardness, then when I take the sand form out, the oven will just collapse. And I really don't want that to happen because it's the end of August. I'm sure I could rebuild it, but I'm actually concerned that the clay, either I have the wrong ratio of ingredients or that it's not as much clay as I think it is. I don't know what is going on, but it's just not drying. And it's, like I said, end of August. I actually built the form and molded the clay over the form several weeks ago now, and it's just not doing anything. Just sits there in the same constant state of flexibility and moisture content. So I think I may actually start trying to take some of the sand out and just see what happens, because my understanding is that when the sand is gone, it'll dry faster, and I also can start a little fire in there to help speed that process even further. That, of course, is assuming that the whole thing doesn't collapse before I can get the fire going in there. So let's take a look. So it's cracking, but it's still so malleable that I can completely close the cracks in. I've also put another coat on. There were even worse cracks before. So this is all you can see where I was out here earlier today, this morning, and just messing with it for these new cracks that have opened up. But all this is new layer. So this is what it looked like after I was finished. And there were some pretty major cracks. There's actually one I missed. Here's another one. That's a big crack. They were all like that all through here, where it's actually pretty deep. I don't think you can tell on the camera, but you're supposed to be able to repair those by just pushing more clay in. And but this has been drying, allegedly. It's been sitting here. It hasn't been drying, it's the problem. It's been sitting here for several weeks, so I think I'm just gonna take it apart, see what happens. First step is to take all this form, everything that's holding up the brick arch out, and see if that collapses. Hopefully not. All right, well, I've been out here for a while, digging out with a shovel, and I finally got to some newspaper. The sand, there's like a hard layer of sand all around. I took out the easy stuff, and then there's like this compact layer of maybe 3 or 4 inches of sand right below the newspaper. So it's almost like there's a secondary dome inside. And I've hit newspaper up close to the bricks. I was getting worried because the sand is so hard that I was thinking I was actually hitting clay and that I had somehow ripped out the newspaper, since I've done this before, but never. I built an oven at a workshop, but I had to leave before we got to the point where it was fired. And it was fired the same day, but they were digging it out when I left. So I didn't experience that part, and I was starting to get nervous that I had somehow, the paper had brought it or something. I don't know. Now that I see the paper, it's ridiculous what I was thinking, but I don't know, I felt like it's like when you're driving somewhere and you think you should be there by now, and every mile you go further, you're more and more convinced that you've missed it. So that's what I've been dealing with, but I finally did get paper. Right there. So that's just inside the brick archway. And you can see there's well, I don't know if you can see or not, but there's quite a layer of sand. Now there's a layer of sand on my phone. Anyway, I'm pretty far back in there. Hard to see. I don't know if I can get the flash on. There we go. That's better. So I'm, pretty far back there. I don't know how much further I have to go before I hit paper on the back. But it's definitely hard to judge in here. The shape of the inside of the clay. Yeah, there's a big old cavity back there, so I've still got quite a ways to go right here. If that's still not up to paper. So keep at it, I guess, till I either get to where I feel like I can fire it or it collapses, hopefully not on top of me. All right, well, that took longer than I thought it was going to. Well, I guess that's not true. I didn't know how long it was going to take. It took longer than I wanted it to take, let's put it that way. But I am down to newspaper almost everywhere except in the far bottom corners, or corner all the way around. So let's take a look. All right, so the hearth floor is pretty much exposed, but you can see there's a ring of sand all the way around the bottom. And it's, my personality is telling me, everything about my being is telling me to get that out. But it doesn't seem rational because I'm not 100% certain this isn't just going to collapse. I'm pretty stoked that it hasn't yet, but it's definitely not dry, and you're not supposed to take the sand out until the outer layer is dry, and it's not. So I'm not going to spend too much more time trying to get that out of there, and I'm also not going to worry too much about all this sand that's actually on the hearth floor. I will sweep that out once the oven's dry if it doesn't collapse. But for right now, I'm just pretty psyched that it hasn't collapsed, and I'm going to start a little fire in here and see if I can't get it to dry out a little more. Oh, I meant to say I had to use, the shovel only went so far because of the angle of the handle and the blade of the shovel. I was hitting the top of the arch. So I had to go get some other tools. I use this. It's called a Homey Z digger. I got it from Fedco. I have several of them. It's actually a cultivation tool, a hand cultivation tool for the garden, but it's got nice sharp edges and a curve on it, so I figured I could get closer to the paper without ripping through it, and I did pretty well. That brown is actually just a different kind of paper that I used, but I forgot that when I first exposed that. I thought, what the heck is that? But anyway, I also had to use this dustpan I was in there sweeping out with my hand and then getting the dustpan and taking it out and putting all that sand back in the pile. So like I said, I'm pretty stoked that it's not collapsed already. I'm going to put these tools away and go grab the stuff to build a fire in here. Here we go. First fire in the oven, possibly last. Fingers crossed that it's not, assuming I can light the match. Well, it would be disappointing if it collapsed, but even right now, that's cool. So. that's hot. Wow. I knew it was gonna be hot, but I didn't know it was gonna be that hot right here. Woo. See all the newspaper burning off in there? All that black stuff hanging down, it's the newspaper burning off.
Isn't newspaper? Where are the bottles you used?
The bottles?
Yeah.
They're underneath those. See the bricks?
Yeah.
They're underneath those. Oh, I can see the sand's already drying in the corners. Awesome.
What sand?
Well, there was sand in here. That's what I built this on. This is clay, but I had to pile up sand. This is the clay you helped me mix, remember?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I had to pile up sand to put it on. So, and then once it's dry, then you take the sand out. The problem is it wasn't drying, so I just took all the sand out. And I'm trying to use this little fire to get it dry without it collapsing. And I don't know if it's gonna work, but all right, kids are getting ready for school. I'm getting ready for work. I'm coming up to check on the oven because it's supposed to rain today, and I need to make sure it's cooled down so that I can put the plastic over it, because I don't have a roof system built yet. If it's not cooled down, I don't know what I'm going to do, because I want to put plastic on a hot oven. It's definitely dried a lot, but just on the top you can really see the difference. The dry section here, and it's hard now, so that is great. I am concerned though that that's still pretty dry. Down here at the bottom it's still flexible, but not as bad as it was before. I'm gonna have to fix that. There's definitely a lot more work to do with the clay, but I'm gonna turn on the light here. It's still warm in here, which is exactly the point of this whole thing, but I can put the plastic on. I am surprised that the newspaper didn't flake off more than it did. This whole thing is a learning experience. It's been very educational, and it's super cool. But I think I can put the plastic on, so that's good. Maybe I'll fire it again later if it's not raining too badly.